Bourbon whiskey.
Bourbon whiskey.
Bourbon whiskey. Now, most bourbons start with a recipe, run with that.
Right.
This one starts with 10 recipes. I'll explain that while we have a wee dram of Four Roses Bourbon whiskey. We've travelled around the world. We've tried our Scotches, our Irish, Japanese, Australian. We haven't touched American yet, so I thought we'd try bourbon whiskey.
Okay.
Falls under the whiskey umbrella still, but does have a lot of rules, which we'll get into that. But for the Four Roses, Paul Jones Jr. fired this up in the late 1880s. Okay. Right. Four Roses coming from the name. He proposed to his wife while she was wearing a corsage of 4 roses.
Very good.
So just a little, shout out to that. So,
okay. Was that his idea or was that his wife's idea?
We'll let you decide that one. Yeah. Just like we've heard the same sort of story a lot. These guys were big. There was a collapse, right? So mid 1900s, Four Roses in itself was one of the top selling bourbons globally. Oh. Right. So they sort of spread around. But then Seagram ended up owning them, another one of these big conglomerates that wanted to push mass production. Right. So instead of working with some quality ingredients and all the rest of it, they just started pumping out blended stuff. Right. Sent the good stuff overseas, kept all the crap in US. So all of a sudden, US market just dropped because they've just lost all their quality. Yeah. The name stayed about because of all that, global... globally, that was still sought after. Right. And so, nearly collapsed. And then with the Prohibition as well, of course, that always caused an issue. But this was one of the few that managed to keep a medicinal whiskey license. So they were selling it as a medicine. Nice. Could keep running for a bit. So that sort of helped save them a bit. But surprisingly enough, they were saved by a Japanese conglomerate by the likes of Kirin Brewing Company. Now, as we've seen with a lot of Japanese whiskies, and it sort of falls to suit, they chase quality. Right. They chase refinement. They went back to brewing things the way they should be, and they saved them. That was only in 2002. Oh, wow. They saved their ass for that, and ever since then they've been on the up and up. So with bourbon falls under a few rules. So every whiskey does to a degree. So when we're talking Scotch, it's got to be 100% malted barley. Right. You can do whatever you want with it after that. Things like that. With bourbons, the main rules are it has to be brewed in the US, has to be aged in brand new charred oak barrels. Brand new. They cannot be used twice. Okay. They can't be used from something else. They have to be brand new. Right. So they're very limited with their flavors when it comes to finishing, right? So that's why these guys went a different route with their recipes. Okay. So to be a bourbon, you have to have at least 51% corn mash. Right. You can have anything else after that. So rye, grains, barley, malted barley, all these sorts of things. What these guys did was they started with 2 mash bills. So a very corn heavy mash bill and a very rye heavy mash bill, and then had 5 different yeasts. Right. And so the yeast, for those that don't know, the yeast basically eats the sugar and the starches from the grains, converts it to alcohol, poops out alcohol, right? But they do impart quite a bit of flavour. So they've got 2 mash bills, 5 yeasts. Right. And they put each yeast with each mash bill, create 10 different recipes, and each recipe brings its own sort of style and flavour to this. So one's very light, fruity and rye, one's very caramel, one's very vanilla, one's very baking spice, one's very floral, and they mix all this together and then age it. Okay. So quite a complex sort of thing, but these are the only guys that do something like this. Usually it's only 1 recipe, maybe 2 if they sort of blend it prior. Yeah. But in saying that, it's still a bourbon. It's still aged in brand new charred oak barrels. Yeah, so it still meets all the conventional rules of American bourbon. Yes, exactly. But 10 recipes, as you says, blended together. And so, having corn mash. It's going to be very sweet. Yeah. Very dense. There's no such thing as a light bourbon. No. Like they're very dense, very heavy, very rich. Yeah, and sweet and rich, like you said. Yeah. There's a deep flavour to that. Yeah, well. So that's so typically bourbon.
Doesn't hit too hard.
No.
That's okay.
No.
Yeah.
I think this is one of their...
Oh, aftertaste.
Yeah. I won't say lower quality, but one of their more generic bottles. I think they've got like single barrels and small batches and everything, but they refine a lot more.
But this is the standard. This is the stock that you would get.
Yes,
so this is your Jameson, your green bottle Jameson that's in the book.
Exactly.
Right.
For the Four Roses. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's a bourbon. Like, you can throw that in front of anybody and they'll know that that's a bourbon. It is that oaky vanilla caramel on that back end. And the thing with bourbons is, like, the things with whiskeys is, with a lot of these other whiskeys, like, you know, Scotches and Japanese and stuff, they can start with some recipes, but their finishing and aging sort of creates such a variety of flavor. Whereas bourbons, because of that barrel and the rules they've got to stick to, the variety of flavor is quite small. It is a niche flavor. Right. So you know it's definitely bourbon. So it's very nuanced, those flavors you're going to find when it comes to comparing bourbons.
Okay.
Right. But you can, I mean, probably should have had another one to compare, to be honest. But I've got to say that
there's always next. It's all right. Okay.
From what I know of bourbons, that is quite complex as far as bourbons go. You can tell that there's a lot at that front end there, that there is, it's not just one recipe. You can tell that there's a lot more to it. Yeah.
So it's nice, but it's like you said, it's hard to pin down what you're tasting there necessarily. It's kind of like if you mix 3 ice creams together and you're near pellets and ice cream, you know, it's kind of, there are extra flavors to it. That
you take a sip without thinking about anything. It's just sort of one consolidated flavor. Yeah. You think rye. When you take a sip, you can taste it. You think vanilla, you can taste it. You think caramel, you can taste that. It's all there. You've just got to break it down.
Yeah. Doing it is the difficult thing. I suppose that's what comes with more experience.
Yeah. The more I smell it, it's kind of like rye mixed with ice cream. It's that vanilla.
I front loaded the ice cream idea into your head, and then you've gone, oh, I know what it tastes.
That's right. That's exactly how that works.
Oh yeah.
But you're getting that vanilla. It is dense, so it sort of brings a bit of a creaminess to it. That rye is quite heavy through it.
Yeah.
But a lot of bourbons are. I think they chase, because that gives that spice, a bit of bite. It's not just a dessert.
But then what's a rye? If that's a bourbon, what's a rye?
So a rye falls under many of the same rules, whereas this has got to be at least 51% corn mash.
Good.
A rye has to be at least 51% rye.
Oh, okay. Right.
And then can mix other things into that. So they do sit on very similar grounds. And you can see that, to me, that is very rye heavy.
Yeah.
But it's been a while since we had a bourbon. So I think that brings us back to one of the questions we've asked on one of the other episodes. You know, does the beginning, the recipe and the distillation contribute more to a whiskey than the barreling, the aging, and the finishing? Now, to me, this kind of answers the question, and I'd love to hear your opinion about it too, because this is, as we said, 10 recipes in one bottle. Yeah. Yet to me, that still hits as a bourbon.
Well, I'd imagine, particularly with the bourbons, the process before the aging matters most, because they can only be aged in one specific type of barrel.
Exactly.
And they can only be aged in that barrel once.
Yes.
Then it is all about the recipe.
Yeah.
Whereas the advantage, I suppose, with the Irish, the Scottish, and the Japanese is they can chop and change.
Exactly.
They can age them in one thing for a little bit, age them in another for the finish.
Exactly. So that's why I'm sort of saying I'm leaning towards this whole aging and finishing to be much more of an influence onto these flavors. Yeah. Because I mean, so much is put into this to begin with. Because it's barreled in the same barrel as every bourbon is, it still shows as a bourbon. Yeah. You know, whereas every other, you know, as you said, Scotch and everything, it is 100% malted barley. Yeah. You can't change from that. Yet the diversity of flavors within that, because of how it's finished. That's right. It kind of answers that question, but I would love to hear everybody's opinion on that. Yeah, that would be interesting, right, to see. And it'd be interesting to hear in particular what the Americans think, because I'd imagine they're more familiar with the bourbons than we are. Yeah, of course. So that'd be the other thing. And tell any Americans there watching, let us know what you think in terms of diversity with flavors are. We aren't very experienced with bourbons. I'd love to hear from somebody who is experienced from bourbons to let us know of how big of a range we're talking here. Because as I said, Scotch, to me, bourbon, I could be wrong. I want to find out what else there is out there.
Well, it could be the simple case that somebody in America thinks the same thing about Scotch that you think about bourbon.
Well, this is true, but yeah.
Based on what you're used to, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a little look into bourbon whiskey.
What do you think out of 5 glasses? What do we think here?
Again, I have got a little personal bias here because, as many of us have done at a younger age, we've kind of gone a bit overboard with certain drinks and have struggled to drink. Yeah, bourbon is that case for me. But I've got to say, I'm also a cigar smoker, and I think bourbons work so well when it comes to pairing with cigars.
I think so.
Just the oil and the flavors and that sweetness. And so, if you can find one you like, the bourbons do definitely have their place in your whiskey cabinet.
Fair enough.
But honestly, like, again, I think I'm just going to have to go sit on the run-of-the-mill 3. Like, this is something I could easily sit on.
Yeah.
But it's not kicking any goals for me. But
yeah. Well, I would say I don't have anything to compare it to bourbon-wise.
Well, that's the other thing, yeah.
But it's not terrible. It's not amazing. It's not blowing my mind. It's not disgusting me. So yeah. It's probably about the middle there again, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe a 2.5, just to be different.
I think it's very rye heavy, and I think a rye, much the same way as an Islay whiskey, it's a time and place kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not something you can just grab all the time. So I think that sort of just holds it back a bit. But other than that, yeah, it's nice, clean, pleasant.
Well, I think I can agree with that. There's a time and a place for every drink, and why not tell us in the comments, where is your time and place for a bourbon?
Fantastic, yeah.
And don't just say when I'm in America. Don't do that, all right? All right.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this whiskey review tonight, everybody remember to like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. You have 10 recipes.
That's why I explain it.
10 recipes, 4 roses, 1 bottle.
Americans do the math well, don't they?
Oh, right.
They'll do anything to keep out of metric system. Yeah.
That explains their position in the OECD standard.